Now, we have just switched into the land of schist. We're in your town now. Schist has become real. So we've now entered into the oldest stones in eastern Connecticut. We just did away with everything I'm going to show you from the western part of the state. This is John Hartshorn. John Hartshorn was 73 years old when he moved to Connecticut. He was a veteran of the King-Philip War in 1708, and his wife, his third wife, 3 of his grandchildren, and 2 of his children were all killed in the 1716 native raid of Haverhill, Massachusetts. He survived it, but his family was pretty much wiped out. And at 73 years old, 2 years later, he left Haverhill, Massachusetts to live with his daughter in what is now Franklin, right almost across the street from where the Franklin Cemetery is, just north of Modesto's and all that. And he carved on the stone that was right out of that area. We still called Norwich back then. But he was 73 years old, the guy, when he got up here. And he's our first gravestone carver in eastern Connecticut. But he brought with him a history. He was actually related to the Lamson family. The Lamsons were the premier Boston, Charleston gravestone carving family. Beautiful, beautiful work. And he was related to them, so he learned from them, but he still had his own things. And mainly he had this little happy head and beautiful border panels, and then he did interesting things in the lunettes, like 2 little birds it looks like there. Next here? Here, it looks like almost like rabbit ears. And this stone is in the ancient burial ground in Hartford, so he clearly wanted to do something nice when he was going to have something there. It's his only stone there. So it's a full-size stone for him, which you didn't see that often. But the lettering is not done by him. That's the odd part about it. That was done by Joshua Hempstead. So this stone, even though it came from him, and he lived down here in essentially Norwich, Franklin, Joshua Hempstead out of New London was a very active person in the New London community. His house is still there, and his diary is great. It's got, if you ever heard of the Joshua Hempstead diary, it talks about everything he ever did, including getting gravestones from his uncle Hartshorn. He was related to him, so he used to get stones and sell them down along the shoreline and trade barrels of dried fish to John. And I believe we believe Obadiah Wheeler trained with John Hartshorn. So John got on the scene about 1720 here in Connecticut, and he started carving immediately. And these stones are very prevalent, but he just hewed them and carved them. They're not all that quaint, except for this one. Next. Your avenue is next. Now we come to what I think is the greatest carver in all of Connecticut, if not all of New England, Obadiah Wheeler. This is the guy that got me started on what I became. When I was in Norwich that day and I saw that first Obadiah Wheeler stone for John Huntington, I was like, holy crap. And this thing is massive. It's like huge. I'm like, where does this stuff come from? I'd never seen anything like it before. Over time, a few years later, I found this wonderful book by Dr. Slater. Dr. Slater was a UConn professor, and this wonderful book is called The Colonial Burial Grounds of Eastern Connecticut. And in here, he goes through every single cemetery and tells you about all the interesting stones and who carved them and histories of the carvers. I found this book about 6 years after I got involved in seriously, and it put me on the quest. Because now I knew every stone he ever carved was, and I went and saw every one of them. I went to every burial ground. So finally, I went to every single burial ground in that book and photographed every stone I could. It's like 50,000 photographs. I probably have, no word of a lie, 100,000 photographs of gravestones I've taken. I'm not joking. Next. Obadiah Wheeler, he is the man. He's got multiple different designs from different periods. And this is sort of a middle period, these rising rosettes that he used, these spirals, the wonderful, wonderful wings that he didn't really feather. He did them like that. He didn't get detailed, but the way he did it was still glorious. That little happy face with the 2 hooking nose, the small little mouth. Next. I mean, look at that. It's just peace, right? If that's not solemn peace, like rest in peace, I don't know what is. Next. This is a beautiful stone too in Hampton. It's on this rise. It's the only stone by him in the whole yard. You stand there and you look at it, it's like looking over a loaf of bread right on the top. It's this Obadiah Wheeler stone looking right back at you. And in here, it's an interesting thing between here. I don't know if I showed you, I have the footstone. He started doing interesting things with the spirals on the rosettes. Then he changed his mind and sort of didn't do it. So he kind of came up and, maybe I'll put these on there. Then he was circle on them, and I wasn't too sure what he was doing. Next. I did get the footstone, darn. But the Wheeler stones, I just love them. Every one of them. Next. This is actually another stone by him that's in Hampton. And Benjamin Collins' son Julius used that pretty much as the basis for all the design of his stones, as the way these guys sort of influenced each other along the way. Next. The Happy Cherubim. Next. He also did these beautiful little stones for children that he'd take his footstones and make gorgeous hearts and different things. So back then, only rich people could afford gravestones. It was the God's honest truth. And as we start to get farther in time, we start to see stones made out of footstones, so they could make them for children, and even adults, that they could try and afford a stone. Your cemetery here, the Cleveland Cemetery, which is a small plot, but hopefully most of you have been there. It's absolutely beautiful, the way it's lined out, the way it separates itself into the two pieces, and the way the whole field lies out. You have 3 Obadiah Wheeler stones in your yard, and 2 John Hart stones in your yard, which is very odd. I mean, there's hundreds of people buried there, but you only have a few stones. You follow me? There's not many people that have stones. But you have stones by all of the prestigious carvers in that Cleveland cemetery. It's really weird. They shouldn't be there. I don't know why they are. But you have an incredible mix. And I hate to say it, they're in horrible shape. Not to say the stones are in horrible shape, but they need a cleaning. I can't tell the dates on most of them, but it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful yard. I mean, you have a gem in your town at the Cleveland Cemetery. I hope you all know that. It's anytime you go there, it's, even though the grass can be tall, it's just glorious. I mean, I love it. But the stones need a cleaning because that's all the artwork is there. Next.
But don't encourage them to go out and just randomly.
Oh no, I'm not encouraging people to just go out and do that. But you gotta know what you're doing. Don't get me wrong. I actually cleaned a couple of stones in your yards while I was through here. And I don't know if I'm going to get to that because I'm burning time fast here. Next, Obadiah Wheeler. He did what we would call that the way the stone jumps out at you. He really would carve the stone back. You follow me? And give you this relief, that strong relief. Next, keep going.
That looks like Collins.
Beautiful Obadiah. This is from your cemetery, by the way, in Cleveland. Next. This is from Cleveland Cemetery, so you can see that's from Cleveland as well. See what I'm talking about? The moss all across. It's not a huge problem. And I could clean that in a half hour without damaging the stone, but I didn't. Cleveland because I'm afraid of sugaring on it. I really want to spend some time with it. Benjamin Collins. I've got to start flying through stuff. Go ahead, dude. Oh my God, Zerubbabel Collins. This guy's work is just amazing. Zerubbabel followed in the style of his dad, but when his dad passed away and he carved his dad's stone, he then went into the style of the Connecticut River Valley, the Johnsons. He's got a lot of Johnson feel to it. Next. This is a stone by his dad, by Ben Collins. Beautiful little stone. Next. This is actually a Zerubbabel stone in his dad's design with nice relief in the Columbia burial ground. Next. This is the Basra Devil. Good old Basra Devil in Goshen Hill. Nobody knows who this person was, but he tried really hard to do things. He tried to copy different designs. One thing about your area of Connecticut is there's a dozen carvers. Nobody knows who they are still today. Next. Next, Basra Devil, next. Ooh, here you got John Huntington. John Huntington was a disciple of Ben Collins, and they were both cabinet makers. They carved in very shallow design because they were used to working in wood. Next. And here you have a beautiful Benjamin Collins stone. And you can see what I mean. He was a cabinet maker. When he died in 1668, he was working on a chest of drawers with a design similar to this. But he did all this wonderful shallow work, so it's hard to read a lot of stones. Next. But you can see he also did interesting things with the sun, the moon, the Pleiades, doing some different things to make the stones interesting. Next. That's the actual stone. I mean, it's just a beautiful stone. Next. Again, just absolutely beautiful Ben Collins. Next. This is Ben Collins' stone for his son. What's that book, The Little Prince, with the kid with the crown, right? Is anybody familiar with that, the Little Prince? You can see he really went overboard for his son, Ben Jr.'s stone. Beautiful stone. I can't imagine being a dad standing over that thing at night carving for your kid. Next. And he also, because he was a cabinet maker, he didn't necessarily feel he had to use skulls in all these different designs. He would actually put some of his stones out with designs he would put on wood, like that. And that's his gravestone. That's Ben's stone carved by his son Zerubbabel. Next. Zerubbabel, on the other hand, after his dad had died, he became enamored with the marble of Vermont, and he moved up to the Bennington area. And every now and then he'd come back and try and sell some stones. So he put the price $7 here to let people know that they could get this beautiful stone in the Columbia Yard. Just catch Zerubbabel next time he's in town, and you could have one of those. Next. Another stone by Zerubbabel. You can see once he got out of the schist and he got into the marble, he was able to get much more intricate with what he was carving, much more detailed. Next. And again, $7. And that wonderful fruit basket. Just really nice stuff. Next. That's Julius Collins stone. Next. Another Julius Collins stone. You can see it's actually signed by Julius, made by Julius Collins right there. That's in Gauche in Hebron. Next. That's another stone by John Huntington. I'm going to try and fly through these. Next, John Huntington. John, you can see he didn't really flatten the stones out. He broke it off the rock, and I'm going to carve into it. I don't care if it's got a bad angle or what. It's not even flush. But you can see the cabinet maker designs that he used. Huntington, like Ben Collins, they were furniture guys. They weren't masons. Next. Gershom Bartlett. Everybody loves Gershom Bartlett, right? How can you not love Gershom Bartlett? He just had this wonderful, whimsical ghost, like Casper. And he had these like strawberries coming out of the sides of their heads, or whatever you call it, morel mushrooms. Next. Now Gershom owned the Bolton quarry, where Bolton schist came from, where all the Manning stones came from, where many of your stones came from up in the Bolton Notch. And that is a Bolton Notch schist stone. You can tell it a mile away. And he's kind of looking at you like, what are you looking at? Look at that, Willis. Next. Gershom Bartlett, that kind of ghosty feel to it, beautiful little wings. He was copied by the Bucklands, by many other people. Next. Gershom, love your baby. Next. A double stone by Gershom. So, these different dates on it, different size. I love the way he did the middle panel to give that design through there. Next. And this here is somebody copying Gershom. We don't know who it is. People actually believe he did it, but I kind of look at all the stuff on the side and go, no. And his nose looks like something off the back of a bull. Right? And a broken stone by Gershom there, but he's all like, whoa, I'm dead? Like that, I'm dead? This here's Levius Collins. This is a guy called the Upswept Wing Carver. We don't know who he is. You've got quite a few stones by him in your yards. We don't know who he is. Next. This is Jonathan Loomis out of Mansfield. Jonathan Loomis had a wonderful style. Johnny, here's your guy, right?
Yes.
Is it John or Jonathan? Will you say it's
It's
John? It's John, isn't it?
I think that's probably John.
John.
The funny,
Yeah.
the son,
Yeah.
the younger one.
Yeah, I think so. Next,
Good
next,
one,
so we got this. So we got the two of them. They're both a little different. The Loomis stones I've got here. Next, and here's the Upswept Wing Carver again. We don't know who this guy is, and he had beautiful, beautiful penmanship. He liked lowercase. He didn't like his capital letters, and that's why I thought I would have figured out who he is by now, because he didn't like his capital letters. But I've never seen any other stones that look like that. Next, that's a beautiful stone by him. A little rust color coming through the face. Next. Another stone by him. You would think somebody that had this kind of work that was that good would know who he was by now, but we don't. Next. John Isham. One of my favorite carvers in my neck of the woods, John Isham. Next. He did these lovely, lovely stones. He lives, his house is literally 15 minutes away from mine. The Pudgy Carver. Another somebody we don't know who it is in Hebron. They call him the Pudgy Carver. One more shot of the Pudgy Carver, and I think we might be done. But next. Of this section. Oh no, we haven't got to the, wow, I forgot. Man, how could I not have the Mannings involved? So the Mannings were, this is not a Manning stone, the Mannings were the premier carving dynasty from 1760 to 1810. Everybody wanted a Manning stone. If you were in Eastern Connecticut, you wanted a Manning stone. Well, too many people wanted Manning stones, so you couldn't get a Manning stone as quickly as you want. Even though there were 3 Mannings carving stones, so many hours in a day. This guy, Aaron Haskins, made a living out of making Manning imitation stones. They never quite made it, They didn't have the ornate detail of the borders. The face had that puffy, bloated, I've been dead for a week look. But you can see the people dug it because they couldn't get a Manning. Next. These are all our Manning. Here's another Loomis, a Massa Loomis. A Massa Loomis. They had these wonderful, wonderful 3-leaf foliage on the sides. Another Manning, now another guy that could carve like no tomorrow, but chose not to. He chose to do this. He could do so much better, but he chose to do this. It's what the people wanted, I guess. Next. Oh, guess what? I screwed up because there's no Manning stones, because we are all of a sudden at Woodchuck Hill. Okay, well, kids, keep going, because that's Woodchuck Hill. This is Woodchuck Hill. You got some great cemeteries. We have just entered the town of Canterbury, and we are at Woodchuck Hill. This is the way my day started when I came out here. I took about 1,000 photographs when I was out here about 4 weeks ago. I whittled it down. It's not 1,000. But we're gonna bang through. Just keep going. You just start rocking me, dear, with these. Now, it's John Walden. I showed you those stones, that stone before of a Massa Loomis. Well, it's very confusing out here because everybody believes all these stones are made by John Walden. And you tell me that some of these they're Loomis stones. And I think this is a Loomis stone. But it's tribute to John Walden. That is a Manning stone. Keep going here, you're doing great. Manning stones again with the Manning border. That is a Walden stone that is in marble, but an urn and willow by John Walden. What's interesting about John Walden is he's the only carver that actually put a cherub and an urn and willow on the same stone. Nobody else did that. Like the Johnsons did their transitions, but he actually put all in a transition on a lunette. Keep going. Now this is a Walden stone where he used the Stevens border panel from Newport, which is very similar to the Manning's border panels. Next. The little buggy eyes. Keep going. The border panels. Okay, this is really interesting in the sense, what should we mourn, departing friends? 'Tis but the voice which Jesus sends. Okay, lovely stuff. Woodchuck Hill. You have the old cemetery on the east. You get the more modern on the west. They face each other, and they're just two cool yards dominated by Walden stones. Next. So what happened is I came here, I got here too early. So I got to this yard, and the stones weren't fit. The sun wasn't quite there yet. So I took a few shots, and then I keep going here. And I took these wonderful sort of atmospheric shots. Keep going. Sort of like just a feel for what your yard is like. There's one of those stones I was talking about with the urn, willow, and the cherub. Keep going. And so I left there because the sun wasn't right, and I went up to Randolph Cemetery, I think it's called. And this is the gate to go in there. Beautiful stones in here. I believe that might be a Walden as well, but I'm not sure. Keep going. Nice little urn and willow. Beautiful atmospheric of this yard under the trees. This whole feel from the yard. Keep going, dear. Keep going. Yes, the Waldos. Whoever the Waldos was, he had money and he had charisma. And he held a torch on his obelisk. He must have been the man, obviously. There's a lot of Waldos in this cemetery. Bacchuses as well. Keep going. Now this stone here, take a look at that. I looked at that and I said, that's carved by somebody that's not represented in your town anywhere else. That's a Bezasul stone. And you don't have a Bezasul stone in your town. But I'm looking at it and it looks like a pizza crust. So the sun quite hadn't hit it yet, so I decided to get my tools out. Go ahead, dear. And that's what's underneath it. You got yourself a nice little Bezasul stone that I cleaned off for you in about a half hour's time, being very gentle. Next. Now the stone's not in great shape, but when you go next, you'll see the cherub. You can see how it's worn out in quite a few spots. But I brought it back to life. And that's what I'm talking about with the Cleveland Cemetery, because I couldn't tell what your oldest stones were. I can go back to 1727 on your stones there, but your cemetery's older than that. You've got some unmarked field stones, and you get some marked stones, but the hartshorn stones, you can't read them. So I just wanted to show you. I did a little. Keep going. Next. And now behind that, you'll see another stone that's by Nathaniel Hodgkins, that urn and willow. And you didn't have any. You only have one other Nathaniel Hodgkins stone in your yards too. It's not an urn and willow, and I was like, I love his work, so I couldn't help myself. Go ahead, next. Doesn't really look that bad, actually. Next, you can't really tell I cleaned it that much, but you got all that crap off of it. Next, and I made the urn kind of visible again. Next, that takes us out of there. So now we're over at Westminster. So now we've hit two cemeteries. Westminster has Waldens out the kazoo. This one's got them coming out of the clouds are coming down on them, but it's under the trees on the western side of the yard, so it's hard to photograph. Next. Yep, keep going. Now we see John Walden starting to tell you, hey guys, the Mannings are all dead. You want to buy your stones from me? He starts signing his stones left and right everywhere in your cemeteries. 1793, the Mannings aren't dead yet, but you'll see, God, next. Cut by John Walden, 1793 with the stone, carved December 1801. Gives you an idea. 7 years later is when the stone actually got into the yard. So that's what John Walden started carving like. That's his first looking stones. That's what John Walden was like before he became Manningized and he became a Manning carver. Next, you can see it's his own design. Nobody else did this. Next, beautiful little kind of interesting shape. And this here is another copy of a Manning. It's not a Manning stone. That's a Lebis Kimball stone from up in Pomfret. Copying the Manning style again. You'll point it on the wings. Next, that's Lebis's. I can tell it's not a Manning. Some people wouldn't be able to, but it's not a Manning. That's not a Manning either. Another copy of Manning's. So I'm telling you about your yards up here. You've got these Manning copiers. There's at least 5 or 6 of them. No, we don't know who they are. This is the stone I was telling you about, one of the ones that is a slate. Doesn't belong here. Who carved it? 1795. I'm starting to think William Crosby might have been involved in this, but I'll see if I have, see how it's got that, remember I was telling you about that scroll on the panel around some sides of the stone with the axe? There's that design right over the top of it. Next. See, you can see a little bit more of that sort of winding rope. Next. This is another stone by John Walden in his early style before he was Manningized, 1787, a very early date for him. Next. There were actually 4 John Waldens that carved stones, so it gets to be tricky as to who carved what. But you can see, again, he wanted you to know, it's 1804. The Mannings are dead. They want you to buy your stones from John Walden. And he's advertising big time in your cemeteries. Cut by John Walden. They're everywhere. I'm not kidding. Another beautiful stone by him. Keep going. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. That is the other stone by Nathaniel Hodgkins. It's in the shades, you really can't see it, but it's unique. Next, that gets us out of here. And we are now back at South. We're back, we've come back to Woodchuck Hill. We'll fly through this. Here we now Walden has gone into a whole different direction. He's got the head sort of on a pedestal, and he's put these cedar trees on the side of it. Where he got that idea from? Kind of hard to say. He's got those bloated dead eyes. But this is all in Woodchuck Hill. There's 2 stones. This is the other stone by him in the same spot, same type of design. You can see his face is looking a little kind of bummed out. And now the Walden stones start popping up. But look at the eyes on the Walden stones. Like, just kind of spinning right there, right? Like, look at that. What the heck are you doing, bud? Just bug-eyed. Keep going. So, and these here. So we do have a couple Mannings, and that's actually would have been a beautiful Manning stone if it hadn't been weathered so badly. A couple of Johann Warren slates. And another another Walden stone with the border panels from the Stevens shop. And here we go. There it is. Isn't that beautiful? The face is weird, let's be honest. But it's 1799, so it's probably carved, 1805 or later. You've gone past the death head and the cherub, but he still puts the cherub there with the urn and the willow. He's the only carver that did that. And it's pretty cool. Keep going, because I like that one. The eyes, I mean, it's so dead. It's dead dirty. But it doesn't have any of those happy faces like the Johnsons, you know what I mean? And just a whole slew of bolt and schist Walden stones. Next. Baldwin Cemetery, here we go, Johnny. Beautiful cemetery, gorgeous, gorgeous. That is a Manning stone right there. You wanted a Manning stone, you wanted that. That's beautiful Manning stone. Next. And it's hard to tell who carved it. I'd say Rockwell probably carved that. Next to it is a stone by Walden. So you can see how similar he tried to be to them. There's the Walden stone. Real pretty, real nice effigy. The other side, they are next to each other. The Walden impersonation of the Manning on the left. Next. And what I love about the stone he used, I don't know where he got it from, because it's not bolt and schist here, has this wonderful orange tinge in the background to it. In the yard, it's really cool when you look at it. It almost looks like it's lettered, it's like layered in orange, like it's ironed in the stone for some reason. And this one's really cool too. It's a slate stone. Why is it here in Baldwin Cemetery? With a little hand pointing up to the clouds, as opposed to down to hell. You know, different ways. Don't know who carved it, but it sure is cute. A beautiful Manning stone again with the big open wings. Beautiful, beautiful John Baldwin. Job is for you, John, right there. Another Manning stone, pretty Manning stones. Mannings to Mannings. You can just see the Manning stones. You can see why the people wanted Manning stones. They're beautiful. I love this stone, Festus Morse. Love his name. Love the broken chain coming out of the hand. Next year, because it shows the chain, little broken link. This is another Walden stone. Keep going. That's again in Baldwin. He's signing stones there too. He wasn't leaving any stone untouched. Here he's got little sort of fig trees on the left that are kind of broken. I'm not quite sure what he was trying to do with that. And here's that wonderful design, a little different again with all the urns and the willow. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Another, now he's initialed it. Instead of signing, he got lazy and just put a J and a W. But he still wanted you to know he was the man. That I find, just being in this yard, if you're standing like this, looking at that, you got a beautiful colonial house in front of you, you got a beautiful colonial house on your left, the trees all around you, and gorgeous stones. And we're in Cary Cemetery. This is where it gets really cool. Here we are with the slates again. Who is this? Where did you come from? And why did you do that? A tree growing out of a coffin. Another Manning impersonator. Why are you here? Another stone with a tree growing out of it, on a slate. We don't know who carved it. Really cool, but I'll show you something soon that'll be why. Now, this is sad. That's Rockwell Manning's gravestone. Rockwell Manning's the guy that carved all these beautiful stones you got here. Rockwell Stone's died. Here's his wife, Sarah Stone, not carved by a Manning. His son, keep going, his son Mansour was a carver, but Mansour did not make these stones. Mansour's wife, Lucretia, and the next one is for his son Mather, who was killed at Coleraine in the Civil War. All those stones are over here on the right side of the yard. This Rockwell's stone in your beautiful Cary Cemetery, which I believe is across the street from Urlansky's property. And here you have Richard Kimball stone, probably the biggest stone Richard Kimball ever made out of Pomfret for one of the ministers in town. I love Richard's work. It's done on a dark brown chocolatey stone that came from the Pomfret area. Next year. I'm not going to try and read this to you. It's a wonderful epitaph. But he's got this beautiful checkerboard that went for it. Obviously a very prestigious individual that this stone was for. I'm trying to fly through this, as you can tell. Beautiful Mannings again. This is the stone of all stones, okay? This is for Roswell and Ellsworth. It was made by Rockwell Manning. It's unbelievably unique. There's no stone like it anywhere else. It's a one of a kind. It's one of their masterpieces by the Mannings, and you've got it at Cary in your cemetery. Yes?
All those Mannings are buried in Cary Cemetery?
Excuse me?
You had all those Manning stones.
Rockwell is buried there. His family's buried there. Yes. Yeah, the
Did he
Manning
live?
family.
Did he
He lived in your town. Yes.
He lived in
He
Canada.
lived somewhere around here. Yeah. Yep. They were based out of, the family was based out of Wyndham. And Hosea was, he was a revolutionary all the way. He had an anti-stamp act tablet that he carved and put over the front of his store. And you can tell through some of his work, he didn't go into towns where the Tories were. You don't see his stones up in North Grosvenor. He was very politicized. And you can see in different areas where he didn't go there. You wonder why there's no Manning stones there. Well, there was a lot of reason for it between the Tories and the revolutionaries here. They didn't mix well. As your town was a very separatist town here as well. But the Mannings are all buried in Wyndham Cemetery, and Hosea Manning, the patriarch of the family, made his own stone. And it says it right on it. He made it by his own hand. And he died in 1806, I think, and his sons both died within 5 years. Both of them died very, very young men. Again, from, I assume, dust in their lungs. But you just don't find, keep going here, you don't find a stone like this anywhere. Look at the eyes on that. Look, you've got these birds of peacocks on top of these cedars. This gravestone with this bloated, dead body inside there, staring out at you in the middle. It's right in the middle of your yard, too. You can't miss this stone. They wanted you to see it. It's not huge, it's only about this tall. It looks a lot bigger in the photographs, but man, oh man. I mean, who the heck wants that on their gravestone, for heaven's sake, right? This guy did, obviously, but it's just an amazing, if you want to be proud of everything, well, David Lamb too, that's a stone in your yard. I mean, you obviously take great care of the cemetery over there, but it's just it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. The Lambs were wonderful. They were based out of Norwich. Keep going here. And this is David Sr. David Sr., this is the weakest stone. Rockwell Manning. Rockwell loved marble. The Mannings, the father and the sons, all were in the Revolutionary War. They all went up into Vermont, and up there they became familiarized with the Bennington, Vermont marble. And while they were there, they carved stones. And then they get so enamored with it, they started bringing it back. And Rockwell was the one that loved it. There's 8 stones in the marble in the Cary Cemetery, all by Rockwell. This is another Manning stone, but not a Manning, a Walden with a black eye. Someone punched it. But the white stones are beautiful, and if they were ever cleaned, they'd shine bright as the snow if you put the D2 on them. That's a Rockwell stone in marble. That's an urn willow. This is David Lamb Jr. David Lamb Jr. and Sr. both carved. David had more of a smiling, happy face, and his father had a more serious face. This is his father's David Sr. stones. And this is a probated stone that actually they know for a fact he carved this. They've gone through, that's one of the actual documented probate record stones right there for him, for David Lamb Sr. I love David's stones. He used this sort of brown stone. Somewhere he found himself that did that. It sort of weathered and cracked that other stones didn't really do. Another stone by Rockwell Manning in marble. All for the Wells family, I think they are. If that's a name that's familiar in town. These are for the Loomis family. Loomis and Wells, I think they are. And you can see again how he did that supported neck like that Walden copied. You can see where Walden copied it from. Beautiful Manning stones, and very soon we're going to start to see the hand of God through the clouds. Here they are. He made 2 stones like this. The Paynes, Polly and her sister, they're both hands of God carrying an olive branch. Real pretty. But they're under those gorgeous sugar maples on the south end of the yard, so they're kind of hard to photograph. I gotta go back there when the leaves are off the trees to get good shots of it. This is the back plot on the east side. The Manning stones are in the front of it over there. And here's the Orlomsky stone, which is just to die for. I mean, absolutely to freaking die for, right? I mean, this is what it should be like, you know? We don't have beautiful stones in our cemeteries these days. The more modern stones they're doing are these ones with photograph of Dad on his John Deere or something. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure some of you like that, but I'm old school, you follow me? I see that, and I fell in love with that big grinding wheel. I'm like, that's really cool. So hats off to all of you here, family members, for that one. So Cleveland Cemetery. The first time I came, it was grass this high. The second time, they put that nice path through. You've got this wonderful stone. As soon as you come in on the left-hand side by they call it the long neck carver, but I say it's John Walden. Keep going, dear. Beautiful yard. You've got stones in here by this guy who was called the John Huntington Imitator from 1757. There's a few stones by him. Another guy, we don't know who this guy was. But the stones are beautiful. They had talent. Another beautiful Richard Kimball stone, a little bit cleaner and better light. Again, for one of your ministers here from the Congregation Church, Solomon Payne, the minister. But absolutely flying, a little flying little head, you know? It's got little wings and everything. I absolutely, that's for him and his wife. And here you actually have Captain Hosea Cleveland in a Walden stone, so much later, probably 1790s than the Clevelands up front, obviously. But this whole side, you can see the grass kind of buries everything through. This right here is a stone by Obadiah Wheeler. As you can see, similar to that one I showed you that I cleaned, you can't see anything from it. This is John Huntington, not John Huntington, imitator stone again, right there. So these are like one-of-a-kind stones that you've got in your yard. There's a few up in Plainfield, but nobody knows who this guy is. He did a wonderful job of copying John Huntington on huge slabs of stone, but we don't know who he is. Manning stones, again, they could really use a good cleaning. This is a Gershom Bartlett stone, the hook and eye guy, another Manning, another beautiful Manning stone. You can see how the black is over the white stone here. It's kind of made it a little tough to see, but the beautiful rosettes on the sides. These are the stones for the Wells family. It was in in Cleveland. There's the 6 stones for the Wells family. Now here is a John Hartshorn stone. You've got 3 of them in your yard. This could very well be the oldest stone in the yard by a carver as opposed to the field stones. You could have some older stones that have initials and dates on them. And this is by Joseph Foster out of Boston. I can't quite read the date on it as well. It's only about this tall. You see the grass is actually taller than it. You can trip right over it because the grass was so tall. But it's a beautiful, beautiful little stone that I would love to clean. And being made of slate, you can clean that very easily compared to brownstone. And here you have another Obadiah Wheeler stone. You can see it's kind of overdone, but the dates, you can make it out of 1727. So yeah, so Obadiah Wheeler's going back to 27, and he didn't really get to this. He came here in 1718. We believe he worked for Hartshorn. His oldest stone is 1722, so it's only 5 years off his oldest stone. But his oldest stone is like gorgeous. It's like he didn't have like a training process, you know, like where a stone looks like crap. You know, he's a learning curve. It just goes from he doesn't exist to masterpiece. It's really weird. Manning stone, because we're going to see some masterpieces in a second coming up. Mannings. These are on the back wall. Here it is. This Obadiah Wheeler stone is almost as tall as me. He didn't make stones that tall. This is about as tall an Obadiah Wheeler stone you will ever find. It's from 1727 for a husband and wife. The 2 stones next to each other. He's got this wonderful crisscross design, beautiful little circles, these glorifying orbs coming out from the side that almost look like eyes, and this beautiful, 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 beautiful face. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Drop dead gorgeous. And there's the stone next to it, which is for his wife. So he had the 6-footer, she got the 4-footer. But they're still beautiful stones. Husband and wife paired. Hers looks more like a woman, you follow me? It's got more of the curls down below, where his had more of a man sort of flow to it, I think. Hers looks a little bit more feminine, but you can see the size of the 2 stones. They're in the far southwest corner of the yard, and there's little goats running around behind you there, and it's a beautiful little farm working, but the trees are so big that they shade these stones all the time. These are the footstones. You can see the 1727 dates on the footstones. That's one thing that's cool about your yard too, is you got footstones in your yards. That's a rarity. So here's another Obadiah Wheeler stone from 1727. So you got a few of them all in your yard that are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's a wonderland, that Cleveland Cemetery, it really is. So Manning stones, a Manning stone, this one right here, for 3 children, 3 faces side by side. It's right next to the Cleveland tomb, actually his tomb itself. But it's not for Cleveland's, they're for Waldo's. Like the Waldo that I saw over at the Randolph with the big obelisk with the torch on it. And I think we might have just run out of stones, kids. I think I might have just finished the program.